My name is Jana Nielsen. I'm 26 years old and I work in tech support. Nothing glamorous, no boss babe title, no sleek office with glass walls and a coffee bar, just a headset, a ticket queue that never ends, and the kind of paycheck that's fine until you realize you're using it to keep other adults afloat. For years, I'd been renting a room in my parents' house, not because I couldn't leave, but because every time I tried, they'd tighten the leash with the same words. We just need help right now. Right now meant the car payment, then the family phone plan, then insurance, then groceries, just this once. Then utilities when something unexpected happened. It was always framed like a temporary emergency, like I was saving them from drowning. But the truth was uglier. I was the life raft they kept standing on while telling everyone I was the anchor. That's why, when I pulled into the driveway for the holiday lunch, I didn't come with hope. I came with a plan. Eat, be civil, leave early. Minimal contact, no arguments, no expectations. I walked in and the noise hit me like a wall. The house was packed. People squeezed onto couches, hovering in doorways, leaning over the kitchen island like it was a bar. The air smelled like roasted meat and old resentment. My mom, Valerie, was in the kitchen, banging pans around like she was mad at the stove. My dad, Graham, was parked in the living room with the posture of someone who always wanted to look like the head of the house, even when he wasn't paying for it. Uncle Dean was already mid-monologue, hands moving like he was teaching a class no one enrolled in. Kids these days don't appreciate structure, he said loudly, like the sentence deserved applause. Aunt Marisol hovered nearby, phone in hand, smiling too much, like she was waiting for gossip to drop out of the ceiling. Cousin Jace was trying to sound smart about some political headline he barely understood, speaking with that confident tone people use when they have no actual facts. And my younger sister, Tessa, sat near the corner, scrolling on her phone like she'd mastered the art of disappearing while still being physically present. Classic Tessa. She could forget chores, drop a class, lose a job, and my parents would treat her like she was fragile crystal. Meanwhile, if I breathed wrong, it became a lecture about how I was difficult. I kept it simple, grabbed a plate, took the only open seat at the table, and started eating like I wasn't waiting for the first shot. I didn't have to wait long. Valerie slid into the chair across from me with the confidence of someone who already decided how the conversation would go. She looked me over slowly, head to toe, like she was inspecting a stain. "So," she said loud enough for half the room to hear, "still renting that room, I see. Maybe this year you'll finally get on your feet enough to, I don't know, contribute more." I paused mid-bite. I didn't snap. I didn't argue. I just stated facts in a flat, calm voice. "I already contribute." Valerie laughed like I'd told a joke. "Oh, Jana, you know what I mean. Real help. Not just the little things." "The little things?" I repeated, the words tasting bitter. "Car payment, phone plan, insurance, groceries." She waved her hand like I was being dramatic. "That doesn't count." I gave her a small smile, the kind that says I'm not doing this today without wasting energy on another sentence. "I'll keep that in mind." She didn't take the hint. "Tessa helps more," Valerie said, and her voice sharpened on my sister's name like it was supposed to sting. "And she doesn't even live here half the time." I looked over at Tessa. She didn't look up. She kept scrolling. She had perfected the art of letting me get hit while she stayed clean. Before I could steer away, Graham came around the corner with his plate and that familiar tone, like volume equals authority. "Your mother's right," he said, dropping into a chair like he owned the air. "We're carrying way too much because of you, Jana. You're 26. Your sister's younger and already more responsible. You, on the other hand." He shook his head like I was a math problem he couldn't solve. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even roll my eyes. "I pay the car," I said evenly, "and the phone plan, and the insurance." Graham snorted, dismissive. "We never asked you to. You offered because you felt guilty about stressing us out, and now you want credit for it. Come on." There it was, classic Graham. Rewrite the past so cleanly it made me sound crazy for remembering it correctly. I stared at him for a second, feeling that familiar tightness settle in my chest. Not shock, never shock. Just the cold recognition of what this was. "Right," I said, my voice dry as dust. "Guilt." That should have been the end. But Uncle Dean heard tension and marched over like a bootleg philosopher, hands up like he was breaking up a fight that didn't exist. "Now, ladies," he said, already framing it like I was being emotional. "Family is all you've got. You only get one mother and father. Be grateful they're guiding you." He didn't ask what happened, didn't care. He just wanted to sound wise. Cousin Jace leaned in, helpful as a scratched CD. I mean, he shrugged. Maybe they're just saying it out of love. Tough love, you know? I stared at him for half a second. Yeah, I said, flat. That's what this looks like. He nodded, completely missing the sarcasm. Across the room, Aunt Marisol's eyes widened. She wasn't going to stop this. She was collecting it, storing every line for later group chats like this was entertainment. Valerie kept going, poking like it was her hobby. We're only trying to get you to do better, she said. Don't get defensive. Graham chimed in immediately. Exactly. We tell you the truth and you run from it. That's your problem. You always run. Something inside me settled. Not rage, not tears, not the panic of trying to explain myself to people determined not to understand. It was clarity. This wasn't frustration. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was them enjoying the moment, treating me like a public project they could diagnose in front of everyone, like humiliating me was part of the holiday menu. I set my fork down. Slow, quiet. I pushed my chair back and stood. No shaking hands, no flushed face, no dramatic breath. I looked at Graham first, then Valerie. You know, I said, voice steady, if this is how you talk about the person keeping your house running, you might want to rethink your audience. The room went weirdly quiet, like everyone suddenly remembered they were watching a real person. Valerie blinked, offended. Graham's jaw tightened, like he was about to launch into another speech. But I didn't give them the time. I turned and walked out. No plate, no coat, no goodbye. Just me leaving their house the same way I'd been mentally rehearsing since I was 18. I didn't hear anyone follow. I didn't look back. They made enough noise without me. Outside, the cold air hit my face and it felt like breathing for the first time all day. I got into my car and drove with the radio off, hands steady on the wheel, jaw locked. I drove a few blocks before the anger started pushing through the calm. Tight, cold, concentrated. Not yelling anger. The kind that settles in your chest and tells you, this is the moment you stop pretending. I didn't want a hotel. I didn't want to call anyone. I didn't want a pep talk. I just wanted distance. I ended up behind a closed strip mall, parked under a flickering light, leaned my seat back, and stared at the ceiling of my car. It wasn't comfortable, but it was quiet, and quiet was all I needed. As I drifted in and out of sleep, memories came in flashes. Graham calling me difficult since middle school. Valerie saying, we just worry because you're never as stable as Tessa. Meanwhile, they leaned on my paycheck whenever it suited them. I remembered the first time they asked me to cover the car payment. It's temporary, Graham said. You use the car most anyway. Tessa used it more, but I paid. Then the phone plan, then insurance. Just until we catch up, they said. They never caught up. They just got comfortable. And lying there in the dark, I finally admitted what I'd been refusing to say out loud for years. They didn't need my help. They needed my obedience. And if that was the price of family, then family was officially too expensive. I woke up just before sunrise with my neck stiff and my phone battery blinking red. For a few seconds, I didn't remember where I was. The ceiling of my car came into focus, the faint buzz of a streetlight outside, the quiet hum that only exists before the world wakes up. Then it all rushed back. The table, Valerie's voice, Graham's dismissive snort, the way everyone had watched like I was a performance. I sat up slowly and exhaled. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. I didn't go back to the house that morning. Not to apologize, not to talk things out. I went straight to work, clocked in like nothing had happened, answered calls, reset passwords, explained basic troubleshooting to people who thought yelling at me would fix their Wi-Fi. Normal, predictable, safe. It wasn't until my lunch break that I checked my phone. 6 messages, all from my mom. The first one was gentle, almost sweet. Let me know you got home safe. I'm still your mother. The second came an hour later. We shouldn't have argued yesterday. You know how emotional holidays get. The third dropped the softness completely. Walking out like that was dramatic, Jana. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. Same pattern every time. Concern, minimization, blame. I didn't reply. I locked my phone and went back inside. That silence, my silence, was the first boundary I'd ever set that didn't come with an explanation attached. And I knew Valerie hated it. She needed reactions the way some people need oxygen. By the time I clocked out that evening, the messages had doubled. You can't keep running from your responsibilities. After everything we've done for you, this is how you treat us? Not once did she acknowledge what she said at the table. Not once did she apologize. The problem in her mind wasn't the humiliation. It was that I'd walked away. Graham didn't text until late that night. One message, 3 words. Grow up. I almost laughed. An hour later, another message popped in. If you want to talk like adults, I'm here. No need for theatrics. There it was. He'd insulted me in front of half the family, but somehow I was the one being dramatic for leaving. I didn't answer. The next morning, another text from him. We're not mad. Let's just reset and move forward. Reset. As if nothing had happened. As if they could rewind time and keep everything exactly how it was. Me paying, them dismissing. I wasn't entertaining that anymore. By midweek, Uncle Dean decided to insert himself, sending a long message about respecting your elders and how family stands together even when things get tough. He wrote it like a fortune cookie crossed with a sermon. I read the first 2 lines and swiped it away. He wasn't asking what happened. He was telling me to fall back in line. Tessa stayed silent. That didn't surprise me. She never stepped in unless it was safe. She'd float, untouched, until the dust settled, then reappear like she'd been there all along. I focused on something else instead, something I'd been too scared to fully claim. The studio apartment. I'd signed the lease a few weeks earlier, quietly, like I was doing something wrong. First floor. Thin walls, old heater that rattled when it kicked on. I'd tucked the key into the bottom of my bag and kept living like nothing had changed, convincing myself I was just waiting for the right moment. There was never going to be a right moment. So that night, after work, I drove straight there. I unlocked the door and stepped into a space that smelled faintly of dust and fresh paint. It wasn't impressive, a basic bed frame, a small table the landlord had left behind, one window that rattled when trucks passed. But it was mine. I set my bags down on the floor and just stood there for a second. No footsteps above me, no voices through the wall, no one watching what I was doing or judging how long I stayed in one place. I opened the blinds, let the evening light spill in, and made the bed with a cheap sheet set I'd picked up on impulse weeks ago, plugged in my charger, connected to the Wi-Fi I paid for, mine, only mine. It felt like breathing fresh air after years underground. For the first week, I didn't reach out to Graham or Valerie at all. I didn't block them. I didn't announce anything. I just let the silence sit where my explanations used to be. Valerie kept texting, some short, some paragraphs. Concern, guilt, irritation, outright disrespect. She cycled through every tone she had. I answered none of it, and that alone felt powerful. By day 5, something else caught my attention. My banking app. The upcoming payments sat there neatly listed. The car payment, the phone plan, the insurance. Seeing them lined up like that annoyed me more than I expected. Not because I couldn't afford them. Because I'd been carrying them without question for so long, convinced it was temporary every single time. It never was. It was convenient. So I stopped them. Car payment canceled. Family phone plan, my card removed. Insurance autopay, disabled. I didn't send a warning, didn't explain. Didn't say, if you don't respect me, I won't pay. I just removed myself. If they wanted to call me a burden, fine. Burdens don't carry entire households. They could pay their own bills the same way every adult does. It felt good doing it quietly. No speeches, no dramatic declaration. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was just done. Valerie noticed first. Her messages shifted from passive-aggressive to sharp. Why are the phones acting weird? Something's wrong with the car payment. Fix this. Then the entitlement came out. You can't just cut things off without talking to us. Like I owed them an exit interview for my own money. I didn't respond. On day 6, Graham tried again. Enough games, call me. I looked at the message, locked my phone, and went back to chopping vegetables for dinner. By the end of the week, the quiet didn't feel heavy. It felt clean. They were used to me reacting, defending, explaining, fixing. Now they were talking into an empty hallway, and I knew exactly what was coming next. The moment the first payment officially bounced, the tone would change. The texts would turn frantic. The calls would multiply. They depended on me far more than I ever depended on them. And for the first time, they were about to feel the weight of that. That night, I went to sleep in my own bed, in my own apartment, with my phone face down on the table. The silence wouldn't last much longer. But this time, I wasn't afraid of it breaking. The silence broke the morning the car payment officially bounced. I was halfway through getting ready for work when my phone started vibrating on the counter. I didn't even have to look to know who it was. Graham. I let it ring. 30 seconds later, it rang again. Then again. Then the texts started piling up so fast the screen barely went dark between them. Call me now. What did you do? This isn't funny, Jana. I didn't respond. I already knew exactly what had happened. When I checked my email, there it was. An automated notification from the bank confirming the cancellation had processed successfully. Right behind it, another email. The family phone plan auto pay had failed. cellular service suspended. Not the Wi-Fi, just the phones. Which meant they could still message me. And they did. Valerie was next. Our phones aren't working. Fix this. Then, immediately after, you can't just shut things off without talking to us. The way she said it, shut things off, like I'd flipped a breaker in her house instead of stopping payments from my account. I ignored everything and left for work. By lunchtime, the meltdown was in full swing. I stepped outside to get some air and saw 8 missed calls from Graham. Another came in while I was scrolling. I answered that one, not because I felt obligated, just because I wanted it done. He didn't bother with a greeting. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" he shouted. "You ruined the whole account. We can't even drive the car until this gets sorted. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us?" I waited for him to finish. Then I spoke calm and steady. "This is how I stopped paying for adults who disrespect me." He didn't like that. He jumped straight into rewriting reality. "We never needed your help in the first place," he snapped. "You insisted on paying. Now you're acting like we depended on you." I cut in quietly. "You called me a burden. Burdens don't pay car notes." There was a pause. Not silence, stunned silence. The kind where someone realizes the script they practiced isn't working. Then he exploded again. "You're unbelievable. You're tearing this family apart." I didn't argue. I hung up. Mid-rant, no warning. Just ended the call and slipped my phone back into my pocket. 2 minutes later, Valerie launched her own assault. "You can't treat your mother like this. Turn the phones back on. Don't ignore me. I know you're reading these." I muted her thread. Tessa finally messaged that afternoon. Not with concern, not with support. Just information. "They're losing it. I'm not getting in the middle. But what did you expect?" Classic Tessa. Neutral, careful, untouched. Aunt Marisol, on the other hand, was thriving. She sent me updates like she was live blogging a disaster. Graham just threw his keys across the room. "Mom's saying you're punishing them. They're calling a family meeting tonight. This is wild." She never asked if I was okay. She wanted a front row seat. Cousin Jace joined in later with his usual balanced take. "Look, I get both sides. They shouldn't yell, but maybe cutting everything off at once was extreme. Maybe just talk to them calmly." I replied with one sentence. "Not your situation. Stay out of it." He sent back a thumbs up emoji like he'd contributed something meaningful. The rest of the afternoon went quiet. Too quiet. That's when I knew they were regrouping. Valerie never stopped. She just changed tactics. That evening, my phone rang again, but this time it wasn't Graham's cell or Valerie's. It was the house number, the landline, old school panic. I let it ring. The voicemail came through a minute later. Valerie's voice, frantic, angry, layered with forced emotion. "Jana, this is ridiculous. Enough. You will call us back. You will fix this. We cannot deal with this right now. Do not ignore your family." I deleted it without listening to the rest. For people who'd called me dead weight days earlier, they were suddenly very invested in the burden paying their bills. By the end of the night, I sat on the edge of my bed, phone muted, watching message after message roll in without feeling anything heavy. No guilt, no doubt. Their panic wasn't about missing me. It was about losing control. The next morning, that became even clearer. Tessa texted me mid-morning. "Just so you know, Dad's trying to figure out where you are." No greeting, no, "Are you okay?" Just information. I asked what she meant. She replied almost immediately. "He's been calling everyone. Anyone who might know something. Mom, too. She dumped a whole box of your old mail onto the table." My jaw tightened. Valerie always went for personal information when she felt cornered. It was her way of pulling strings she had no right to touch. I typed back. "What's she looking for?" There was a pause before Tessa answered. "Anything with an address. Anything that might say where you live. She keeps saying she has a right to know where her kids are." Kids, not adults, not individuals. Property. As I was reading her message, my phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't a text. It was an alert. Location services shared with family group. My stomach dropped. I opened my settings. There it was. My phone was still linked to the family plan Graham had insisted on when I got my first smartphone years ago. He'd said it was simpler, cheaper, easier. I'd never thought about it again. That simple setup was letting them see exactly where I was. A leash I didn't even know was still there. I texted Tessa immediately. "When did they start checking my location?" She took longer to reply. Then, "Dad asked me last night if I saw you on the map. I said no. He checked himself and said something like, 'She can't hide forever.'" My irritation was sharp and clean. Not panic. Anger at the violation. I didn't hesitate. I left work on my lunch break and drove straight to a phone store. "I need my own plan," I told the guy at the counter. "Today." He transferred my number. 15 minutes later, I was off their carrier account. But I wasn't done. I turned off family sharing. disabled location services, reset passwords, change recovery emails, cut every digital thread they might still be holding. I wasn't leaving a single crack open. On the drive back to work, Tessa texted again. Mom keeps asking if you told me anything. She wants your address. Then another message. She says you're being dramatic and she needs to check on you. Control, wrapped in concern. I replied once. Don't give them anything. Play dumb. She didn't argue. She just sent back, yeah, I figured. That told me everything. That evening, when I locked my apartment door and set my phone down on the counter, something shifted. For the first time since I'd left, I felt truly away from them. Not just physically. Access was gone. Bills were cut. Tracking was disabled. The wires were severed. And I knew, without a doubt, that this wasn't over. They'd lost control quietly. They weren't going to accept that without a fight. Things went quiet the next day. Not peaceful quiet. The kind that sits wrong in your chest. Like the pause before someone slams a door. Valerie doesn't stop when she loses control. She escalates. Silence for her isn't surrender. It's strategy. I found out what that strategy was near closing time at work. I was shutting down my station when one of my coworkers leaned over the divider, eyes a little too curious. Jana, there are some people outside asking for you? I already knew. I walked toward the front window, and there they were, my parents standing in the middle of the parking lot like they were waiting to be filmed. Valerie, Graham, and Riley, one of my dad's buddies, the kind of guy who always acted like he ran some imaginary neighborhood council no one voted him into. Great. They weren't even trying to be subtle. Valerie was pacing. Graham stood with his arms crossed, jaw tight, practicing his concerned parent face. Riley leaned against a car, scanning the lot like he was there to intimidate someone. I took a breath and stepped outside, keeping the door propped open behind me. Valerie spotted me instantly. She went straight into performance mode. Jana, she cried, voice cracking loud enough to turn heads. You can't keep doing this to us. People slowed down. A couple walking to their car glanced over. Exactly what she wanted. Graham stepped forward, lowering his voice the second he noticed the audience. We're just worried about you, he said calmly. Your mother hasn't slept in days. I looked at him, expression flat. You done? Valerie gasped like I'd slapped her. Riley stepped closer, invading my space, voice dropping into that condescending tone older men use when they think they're about to teach you a lesson. Look, he said, this is family business. Don't make it messy. Just talk to them. Move back, I said. He smirked. You don't need to act tough, kid. Nobody's here to hurt you. Move back, I repeated. Same tone, no emotion. That's what threw him. Not anger, not fear, just certainty. Graham jumped in, trying to regain control. Don't talk to him like that. Riley's just trying to help. I looked straight at him. Why is he even here? No one answered. Valerie grabbed Graham's sleeve, crying louder. She's shutting us out. She won't even tell us where she lives. That's correct, I said. Her crying stopped mid-sob. You wouldn't, she whispered. I'm your mother. That's your title, I replied. Not a password. People were fully watching now. That's when Graham tried the reset tone again. We didn't come here to fight, just talk. We're your parents. Not here, I said. Riley scoffed. So you're just going to walk away? Yes, I said. That's exactly what I'm going to do. I turned toward the door. Behind me, Riley muttered something about kids these days and disrespect. I didn't look back. Inside, my manager was already hovering. He'd seen enough. That your family? He asked quietly. Yes, I said. They're crossing lines. He nodded. I'll call security. By the time the building security guard came out, Valerie was still crying, Graham was pretending to be calm, and Riley was puffing up again like that might change the rules. It didn't. Security told them they couldn't loiter or block the entrance. They had to leave. Riley backed off first, hands up like he was above it all. Graham followed, muttering. Valerie cried the entire walk to the car, loud enough to attract one last look, not convincing enough to make anyone intervene. When they drove off, I didn't feel shaken. I felt confirmed. Showing up at my job wasn't concern. It was intimidation. And I wasn't going to wait around for the next move. That night, I booked a consultation with a local attorney. The next morning, we talked. She told me to document everything, stop engaging, and send a no-contact notice. She drafted one for me in 10 minutes. Clean, legal, final. I mailed it certified. Kept copies with my lease, bank records, and screenshots. I thought that might slow them down. I was wrong. 3 days later, there was a knock at my apartment door. Slow, firm, official. I looked through the peephole. 2 police officers. I opened the door calmly. Morning, I said. One of them checked his notepad. Are you Jana Nielsen? Yes. We received a report from your parents. I nodded. I figured. They said I'd abandoned the household, taken property that wasn't mine, and maliciously cut off essential services. In other words, they tried to make it criminal. I stepped aside. Come in. I've got everything ready. They exchanged a look and entered. I laid the folder on the table. Bank records showing years of bill payments. Text confirming what I covered. My lease. Screenshots of tracking attempts. A timeline of the last 2 weeks. No commentary, no emotion. Just facts. The officers flipped through it quietly. One of them looked up. You were expecting this. Based on how things were going, I said, it wasn't hard to predict. They asked if I'd call my parents on speaker. I agreed. If they wanted to lie, they could do it with witnesses. I dialed Graham. He answered immediately. What do you want? One officer spoke. Mr. Nielsen, this is Officer Daniels with the city police. We're following up on a report you filed. The panic in his voice was immediate. Oh, right. Yes, we're just worried. Our daughter's been unstable. Gaslighting, live. Your daughter has provided documentation that contradicts your claims, the officer said calmly. We need clarification. Graham stumbled. Things were misunderstood. The bills, the officer said. She paid them personally. Well, she owes us, Graham said quickly. There it was. The truth. That's not a legal basis for a complaint, the officer replied, and filing a false report is serious. Valerie grabbed the phone. She won't even tell us where she lives. We have a right to know where our child is. She is an adult, the officer said. You have no such right. Valerie started crying. The officer ended the call. They gave me a card and a warning I already expected. If they contact you again, file for a no-contact order. Based on this, you'd likely get it. When the door closed behind them, the apartment was silent again. Not tense. Final. I didn't change it. I didn't shorten it. I didn't soften it. I just finally started using it like it belonged to me. After the police left, the apartment felt different. Not just quiet, sealed, like something had been closed properly instead of just pushed aside. I made myself coffee and sat at the small table by the window, staring at nothing in particular. My hands weren't shaking. My chest wasn't tight. I wasn't bracing for the next impact. That's when it hit me. This wasn't relief after chaos. This was the absence of fear. Of course, my family didn't let it end cleanly. They never do. Uncle Dean called first. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail anyway, because men like him always believe their voice deserves space. Jana, you need to fix this, he said. Whatever happened, they're still your parents. Families work through things. Be the bigger person. Be bigger, be quieter, be smaller. I deleted it. Aunt Marisol texted next. OMG, what did you do? They're freaking out. Call me. She wanted details, not resolution. A front row seat, not peace. I didn't respond. Then came the texts from extended family. Vague, judgmental, carefully worded so no one had to take responsibility. They're just worried. You know how your mom is. Life's too short to hold grudges. No one asked what was said to me. No one asked why police were involved. No one asked how I was. They just wanted things to go back to normal. Normal for them. Unlivable for me. So I did the last thing I needed to do. I opened my message thread with Graham and Valerie. I didn't reread old messages. I didn't relive anything. I typed one sentence. Do not contact me again. If you need to communicate, do it through a lawyer. No explanation, no emotion, no apology. I hit send. Then I locked my phone and turned it face down. That was it. I expected something dramatic afterward. Panic, adrenaline, the urge to check my phone every 5 minutes. None of it came. The silence stayed. Real silence. Days passed. Then weeks. No surprise visits. No calls from unknown numbers. No dramatic family meeting ambushes. Either they finally realized I wasn't bluffing, or they got tired of pushing against a wall that didn't move. I settled into my routine. Work, groceries, quiet evenings with the windows open. I noticed things I'd never had space to notice before, how I slept through the night without grinding my teeth, how my shoulders weren't constantly tense, how I stopped rehearsing conversations in my head. I wasn't waiting for the next accusation. I wasn't preparing defenses. I wasn't managing anyone else's emotions. One night, as I washed dishes in my tiny kitchen, it hit me just how much I used to carry. Not just money. Guilt, fear, responsibility that was never mine. They'd convinced me that love meant endurance. That family meant sacrifice without limits. That leaving meant failure. But standing there, water running, apartment quiet, I finally understood the truth they never wanted me to see. If someone only values you when you're useful, they don't love you. They manage you. And I was done being managed. I didn't win. There was no apology, no emotional reconciliation, no dramatic realization on their end. What I got was better. freedom without permission, peace without conditions, a life that didn't require me to disappear to keep others comfortable. The story doesn't end with forgiveness. It ends with distance. And for the first time in my life, that distance feels like safety.